There is one character in Thomas the Tank Engine that stands out to me as much more than meets the eye. A character not from the Railway series, or even one that we barely see. This is a character we see in almost every episode and take for granted. And his name? Cranky. Cranky the Crane. Not a name that most people have right in the front of their mind when they're praising Thomas. Can't really blame them though, as for most of the show's life, he's just sort of been there. Not really doing much, just grumbling about the engines, but what if I told you you were wrong? And that in fact, Cranky may have some of the best character growth in the entire show. Don't believe me? Well, that's a pretty good thing. It would have been a short video if you had. Before we begin, however, I'd like to quickly thank Mainline Engine 112 for helping me research this video. Me and him have had many great discussions on Twitter about Cranky's growth as a character, and his links will be in the description below and the channel card above. First off, who is Cranky? Introduced in Season 5 of the TV series in the episode Cranky Bugs, Cranky was kind of a villain.
You're useless little bugs.
Do you want some? I'll give it you.
He was very rude to the engines and made them late, which got them in trouble. By the end of the episode, a storm rolls in and causes an out-of-control ship to crash into the pier, knocking Cranky over. The engines help save the day and put him back upright. And that could have just been it. It could have just ended there and we could have never seen Cranky again. That wasn't uncommon in the show, especially for Season 5. We saw many newcomers around this time who we never saw again. However, something odd started happening with Cranky. He became somewhat of a mocking presence, appearing again, never as rude as his first appearance, but for the rest of the season he showed up to insult the engines. In Horrid Lorry, he's the one to suggest the lorry and says they'll take their jobs. In Something in the Air, at the end of the episode, he insults Henry for his crash. But one of these appearances in Season 5 stand out to me, however. In Make Someone Happy, Cranky is in a good mood, something we rarely see.
Hey, down there, you two. I'm playing Lucky Dip in the Tramper's Hole, and all of these are for you.
As stated in Cranky Bugs, Season 5 for Cranky is when he's just arrived on the island. Rude at first, then cheeky, but one of his most major traits that will follow him through the following seasons is missing. Loneliness. The next time we see Cranky in any major way is in the episode that confirms who he is and sets the groundwork for all future appearances. No Sleep for Cranky. This episode starts by telling you everything you need to know about Cranky. He gets little sleep and is lonely because he's stuck at the docks and often works well into the night when no one is around. Bill and Ben arrive and Cranky is in no mood for them, snapping at them, especially when they call him lonely. He gets so angry he drops a load of pipes and accidentally traps the engines at the docks, causing his own worst nightmare. It's quite telling about Cranky's personality that he doesn't try to deny what he did when the Fat Controller finds out. He's just upset with himself and upset he's trapped these engines he doesn't like by the docks. By the time morning comes and Salty is yet to stop talking, Cranky sounds like he's on the edge of a nervous breakdown.
I can't take any more.
Bill and Ben were partly right when they said Cranky was lonely. However, he didn't need them or Salty, he needed someone who understood how it felt to be trapped and overworked. Remember that for later. After this, we barely see Cranky. For the next few seasons, he's used more as set dressing, right until the show switched to CGI.
Then Henry saw Cranky. Cranky was very tall.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Lots of characters got their personality or character growth reset or changed in those seasons to fit the plot.
He doesn't even look like an engine, said Edward.
Hello, Henry.
You're very nice, Trevor, puffed Henry, but you wouldn't make a very good flagpole.
I don't need your help, sniffed Edward. Newfangled nonsense.
And if anything, Cranky being ignored helped his character. He was lonely before, but now with this switch to CGI, he's also bitter from being ignored so much. In the first episode of Season 13, Creaky Cranky, he is once again at the docks. He complains to Thomas that he doesn't get any rest and never gets to go to any parties, as he's unable to leave the dock. Cranky has insecurities about his ability as a crane, which first come up in this episode. It's another layer to his character that yet again feels natural. When Thomas implies Cranky is weak and that he's creaking, remember this also for later. Cranky insults him back, and they start a sort of arms race of strength to see who is stronger. Ending the episode, we see Cranky picking up Thomas and breaking himself. This is very in character for the boastful crane we saw at the start of season 5. In a way, this is extremely shocking when you consider that at this point Cranky had been a character for 10 years, and that the Miller era and Hit era were well known for twisting characters into nicer, less complex versions of themselves. Yet here we see Cranky, who's just as rude as he's always been, but if anything is more complex with the insecurities this episode adds to his character. In Blue Mountain Mystery, we learn that at one point in Cranky's history he knocked Victor into the sea while trying to unload Luke. While the movie focuses on Luke's guilt and Luke feels like it's all his fault, I would argue Cranky feels solely responsible for this incident. Cranky is very snappy when Thomas comes asking questions about the incident, claiming he's too busy, which is obviously just an excuse as there's hardly anyone around. When pushed, he shouts at Thomas and seems outraged as he gives very little information.
I need your help. Do you remember a yellow engine that fell in the sea?
I'm busy. Maybe I did.
Where did he go, Cranky?
All I can remember was that his light was broken, and I couldn't understand a word he said.
It looks to me like Cranky believes it's all his fault, and that possibly that he led to an engine being scrapped. This could also be the reason that he seems to dislike speaking to the engines after the switch to CGI, as it reminds him of his guilt. In season 17, we see Cranky paired up with Kevin. Both are cranes, and it leads to a very interesting episode. Here at the start of the episode, we see some more things that will carry over for Cranky's character for the rest of the show. Here at the start of the episode, we see that the docks are becoming busier and busier. Cranky is even struggling to keep up with the work. It may or may not be intentional, but he looks even dirtier in this episode than he normally does. Second of all is the fact that when Cranky gets overworked, he denies it. As much as he complains about the extra work, he never once asks for help and actively pushes it away. Again, something to remember for later.
I told the Fat Controller, and I'm telling you, I don't need any help.
And lastly is the fact that when he gets overworked, Cranky starts to get careless. He has accidents, things go wrong. These will be important to remember for later. Back to the episode, the Fat Controller sees the mess at the docks and tells Cranky he is bringing another crane to help him. Cranky really does not like this idea and wants to reject this, and takes his frustration about not being listened to on the matter out on Kevin. Throughout the episode, Cranky makes several excuses for why Kevin annoys him, but the fact of the matter is, Cranky feels like he's being undermined by the Fat Controller, and that he isn't being listened to. Yes, he's being overworked, but Cranky isn't getting a choice in the matter of whether or not he's getting help. Kevin rushes in to help Cranky 3 times. The first 2 are successes, but the third time Kevin falls into the sea. Cranky says,
I told him to stay put, but nobody listens to old Cranky.
This could just come across as an insult to Kevin, but I think what this really is the main issue at play here. Cranky feels like no one listens to him, and he's got a point. The Fat Controller doesn't listen to him, now or in the future. And when he speaks to the engines, especially Salty, they ignore him or tease him. Salty is especially bad for this, always making jokes at Cranky's expense. Another interesting point is that due to Cranky telling Kevin to stay in the corner, he is inadvertently the one causing Kevin to fall into the sea, which calls back to when Victor fell into the sea, when Cranky knocked him off the boat. I do not think this is a coincidence, considering the head writer for this era, Andrew Bremer, was a script editor for the Blue Mountain Mystery movie. It seems to me this could be another reason Cranky doesn't want Kevin's help, as it reminds him of Victor. But when it comes down to it at the end, when the Fat Controller tries to blame Kevin for everything that's happened, Cranky steps in and defends him, showing the same good-hearted spirit we saw from before. In the end, Cranky agrees for Kevin to help him, though he seems nervous about it. Again, I know I keep saying this, but please remember this.
It was mine. Kevin was just trying to help. He's a bit reckless, but he's a hard worker. And really useful.
Another minor appearance that I think is worth mentioning is Away from the Sea. When Salty's engine breaks down and he splutters, Cranky shows genuine concern for his friend, even though Salty just teases him all the time. And Cranky even encourages him to go to the diesel works to be repaired. And while he's annoyed about having to teach Porter how the docks works when Salty's away, he acknowledges it'll be good to have Porter around and he'll be a good worker.
What's with all the noises, Salty? Are you all right? Thomas is right. You should go to the diesel works. They'll tell you what's wrong with you.
It's small, but it shows the somewhat caring side we saw of early Cranky is still there. One of Cranky's finest hours is in the film Tale of the Brave. With no context to what's happening, he springs into action when Thomas tells him he needs to stop a ship. He puts himself in harm's way and almost gets pulled into the sea to stop the ship, just for his friends. In A Cranky Christmas, Cranky accidentally smashes a box and hides it. This could be seen as him not wanting to get into trouble, but from what we know about Cranky, it could also be seen that he's worried about being replaced over it. There is a pattern you'll start to see repeats a lot with Cranky, his underlying fear of replacement. Now, all the things I told you to remember, they're for this episode, because this leads us nicely into the final, most important part of Cranky's character arc, the end. Everything up until this point has just been a building block for him, building to the boiling point where everything comes crashing down for Cranky. In Cranky at the end of the line, we see Cranky being mocked for creaking, something that has repeatedly been a worry for him ever since season 13. We learn the Fat Controller is thinking and talking about getting new, big, fancy cranes, and Cranky panics thinking he's being replaced because he creaks and is old. Cranky overworks himself, and as we've seen so many times before, this causes him to get careless and have accidents. He drives himself mad over this to the point where he dreams about falling into the sea and dying. And then he wakes up and sees, to his right, Carly, a new crane the Fat Controller has brought to help him. Bigger, fancier, brighter, and better in every way than him. And you want to know the ironic part? The Fat Controller wasn't even going to replace Cranky. He only got a new crane because Cranky started overworking himself and caused so many accidents. He caused his own downfall. That's just kinda sad, and you can really feel for Cranky in this moment. As you can imagine, in this moment Cranky isn't happy at all. The Fat Controller has gone behind his back yet again to bring in new crane, to give him help he doesn't want. Like with Kevin before him, he does however find a little relief, which sort of brings up the tone a bit to not be such a dire end to an episode. Carly creaks and tells him it's just part of being a crane and it's normal. This one part of his character journey has completed. From this moment on, Cranky no longer worries about his creaking or being old. However, he does worry about Carly. She's survived and opened a complete new can of worms for him to worry about. New crane at the dock picks up exactly where the last episode ended the next morning. Cranky tries his best to get along with Carly. He seems like he's really trying to give her the benefit of the doubt and get along with her. But everyone decides they want to speak to her rather than him. It's yet again another example of nobody caring about Cranky. They'd rather speak to the new, fancier crane, and it frustrates him. He takes this personally and takes it out on Carly by trying to outdo her like he did with Thomas, but both of them end up getting tangled up in a mess. Cranky and Carly learn to get along with each other, and these events even cause Big Mickey to speak for the first time in years. It's implied Cranky has known Big Mickey for years, but they've never spoken. The big crane thinking that Cranky didn't want to socialise, when in reality, Cranky thought the same about him. I said at the start and at the title of this video that Cranky is the most consistent character, and I stand by that. His character grows in believable ways, unlike most who have very rocky episodes. We start off with a crane in his younger years, rude, boastful, but with a kind heart when it counts. A crane who, as time goes on, becomes jaded by loneliness and no one listening to a thing he says, and who has overwhelming insecurities that never get addressed. It all comes to a head when Carly arrives, but she does something wonderful for him, something that he didn't realise he needed and she didn't realise she was giving. Friendship. Someone who could understand Cranky, another crane who knew what he was going through and could help him lighten up. In every episode we see Cranky, and leading up to Carly's introduction, he's struggling to cope at the docks and he's barely managing, pushing through the fact he needs help, as he's too scared of being scrapped. Carly helped showed him he could get the help he needed without having that fear, and that he wasn't going to be replaced, no matter what. This is why, ultimately, I see Cranky as one of the best characters in the show for in terms of how he grows. At no point does he ever have an episode that ruins this, I don't think. It's an amazing story you don't see often and is very well done subtly across multiple episodes, multiple showrunners and multiple seasons. I'm not even going to pretend it was planned from the beginning because it just wasn't, but it works out so beautifully looking back on it. A lot of characters in Thomas have wonderful stories and even full character arcs that work really well, but that's mostly in the Railway series. Cranky isn't a Railway series character. He's from the awkward middle years of seasons 5 to 7, where, while characters were still in focus, they weren't nearly as pushed as much as the books in the early episodes. So if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and share it, and if you did want to see more, please click this link to see a video where I talk about the issues of Mavis.